Hey, let's make a really lame hello world function. Just joking, right? That's what most people do in their tutorials. We don't want to make a lame hello world function. Let's do something that's a little bit more interesting. Let's make a function that is going to get a records by using dig, which means it has to call some kind of a module that can communicate with the Linux CLI. And let's get the A records and kind of parse them out. Let's do that. Let's make a function out of that today. Now, we could do this all in the Python interpreter. However, we're going to write the real code inside of a text file. So we are going to use the Python interpreter just to check a couple of commands here and there, and you can import and do a little bit of testing real time. But the actual code, we're going to be writing it within a text file. So to get started, if you remember from a previous video, I did which Python 3, because we have to know the directory of where we can find Python 3, so we can add that to the top of the file. I've done that right here. So let's get a text editor open. And we're going to add that as the very first line. We're going to do !user/bin/python3. Okay? And let's document what we want as our goal within this function that we're writing, okay? Now, there's a couple of ways that we could leave comments. We could make a bunch of lines, and we could block them out like this, because in Python, a pound sign, or as the younger kids, or as my 16-year-old calls it, he calls it the hashtag. But you can make multiple lines of comments by doing that, of course. Or the other way, if you make 3 double quotes, and then somewhere down a few lines later, 3 more double quotes, that is now a block where you can make a very long comment in. So let's document our goal. What's our goal on this? Goal. We want to perform a dig against a host name, okay? Then we want to parse the A records from the dig, and then print A records to screen. And let's make it also, let's look at the length. Look at the length or number of A records. Cool. That's what we're going to make in this. So now we've got a little bit of documentation here. We know what we're going to do with this script. We can get started. Now, if you recall from the last video, let's do this really quick. Python 3. We're going to do help. Help. And remember, we had modules that was right there. Let's type in modules. We are going to need the help of a built-in module, and we need to import it so that we can actually get started. The module that we are going to import is one. Let me see if I can scroll up and see it in here. It's named subprocess. Sub right there. Subprocess. That's the one that we are going to import. Okay. So let's get out of here. If I can remember how to exit out of this help module. You are now leaving help. Oh, perfect. So import subprocess. Okay. No errors. That worked. If we were to type like an extra letter, you'd get an error that the module doesn't exist. So we're going to do that inside of our code here. Import subprocess. Okay. Easy enough. So we know that works. We can type import subprocess. Now, let's start defining a function. Now, to define a function in Python when you're writing your own, you begin with def and then the function name. In this case, let's name this first one get a record. Okay, and then we are going to put parentheses and then a colon, and then we're going to make a new line. And once we get to that new line, we're going to do indents. We're not going to use tabs. We are going to use 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to make a new comment section. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So inside of here, we're going to put what the purpose of this function is. So this function will call dig and obtain the A records for a given host name. Okay. Easy enough. Now let's get started. We've already imported subprocess, so now we can start using that to some degree. Let's do a little test over here first on how we can use this. we're going to use another module within subprocess known as run. So we're going to do dir subprocess.run. That's the one we're going to actually use. Now we can do a little test of this, okay? We are going to type this in your interpreter. Do subprocess.run. And let's do a command. You're in Linux, let's just do ls. And we want this to be saved, or the standard out. We want that to be saved to subprocess.pipe. Okay, cool. All right, so what do you see? You can see that we did an ls. We've got standard out is listed here. This little guy, what this means is that this is bytes and not a string. That's what you will see a lot in Python 3 when you're working with different kinds of objects. You'll often see them as a byte object rather than a string. So what we did here was, we can see everything that's in this directory. We have checkhost.py. Then we have this \n, which is basically like an enter line or new line. We've got desktop, documents, downloads, music, pictures, public, PyCharm projects, nsnap, and so forth, right? So we have all that. Hit the up arrow, and let's actually save this into a variable. Let's name this as, let's just name it ls, okay? This time, it didn't actually print it, but if we type ls, we have it all there. So if we do dir of ls, what do we see? Well, we've got basically everything that we have in here. The one we want to look at is standard out. And we did that so that we can save that data and look at it later. Okay, so let's just take a look here. Let's do print ls.stdout. Cool. So now we can see that trimmed off all of that other data. We can see that it's still a byte type object, and if you don't believe me, we can do this. So in here, we don't need to do all of it, but we can do type of ls.stdout. We don't need to do print because we're inside of the interpreter, and you can see that it's bytes. Cool? So you can really run any command on the system similar to that. So how are we going to do a dig command? It's very similar, right? We are going to do... Actually, let me show you this, what's going to happen. If we type dig space google.com, is this going to work or not? Let me actually name this dig really quick. Dig. Oh, it got some kind of an error. That's expected. If you have more than one command in here, you really have to run it as a list. Okay? So now you need to make that a string, make that a string, and then we have to put a comma there. And then what do we get this time? No error. So what does that mean? It means that our dig actually worked. Okay, so let's go and add this inside of our function. And if you remember how we did that, let's name this dig is equal to subprocess.run. We're going to do it like this. So subprocess.run. Remember we had std out equals subprocess.pipe. Okay, we had that. And before that, let's go in and actually put our command that we want to run. Now, what you'll see a lot of people do is they'll define the command on another line. You could do it like that, or you could just define it right here on this line. In this case, let's do that. So we're going to do it like this. We're going to do dig, but instead of google.com, we're going to write hostname. And why do we want to do hostname instead of hard coding it as Google? Well, what that will allow us to do is allow us to pass an argument or a parameter of any given hostname and perform the same command. So where do we get hostname? We're going to define it right here, hostname. So when we call this function, we're going to call it, it'll look kind of like this. It'll be like get a record. And this could be anything you want it to be. So we could say google.com. We could do it like that. So when we're outside and we call it, it'll allow us to pass anything we want. Okay, so let's just leave it like that for now. Dig subprocess.run. Dig and then hostname std out is subprocess.pipe. Okay, cool. And what do we want to do? When we have a function, Actually, let's save this first. Let's save it so you can get a little bit of a better idea. For now, save it to your desktop. Horrible file management, again, I know, but whatever, it's fine. Let's name it as dig.py. And save. Okay. So let's exit out of your interpreter. Switch over to your desktop directory. And now let's run Python 3 dig.py. Huh. We got nothing on the screen. Why do we have nothing on the screen, yet it worked in the interpreter? Any ideas? Well, let's go in and modify this a little bit. So, for one, we're not printing anything to the screen. Two, we're not returning anything out of this function either. Okay? So when you have a function, best practice is you actually want to return something. You could return true, you could return false, you could return the data that you just ran. In this case, let's do it like this. Let's do return dig. Okay? Return dig. Sounds good to me. Save it, run it again. And do we have anything different that happens? No, we do not. Now why? Again, we're still not doing a print, or we're not doing anything else with it. Now, how we executed this here, what we could do is name this as a variable here. Let's just name this as G for Google. We're going to name it like that, okay? G is equal to that. And then let's say we want to do print G. Go ahead and save, execute again, and there we go. Now we've got some data that we can start working with. So we've got our first function written. Fairly easy to do, but it's kind of like a jumbled mess, really. I mean, you look at it like this compared to dig google.com, this is much easier to read, right? And we could probably even make it even better if we were to add some other statements here, like we wanted to make it short, we only wanted A records, many different things we could do to shorten it up. I'm trying to remember what it is. I think it's like plus short. There we go. Plus short makes it really easy. If you've got an A record, it's going to return much less data. What's another website? Facebook.com. See? Pretty easy to do there. But we could do this for multiple A records if we really wanted to. So we're going to stick with the messy output, though, because you need to learn to process some of this messy output. So let's run that again, and let's look at it. And if you recall, this /n means a new line. So that gives me an idea of something that we could work with, okay? We could also make this a little bit differently, too. I mean, we could make this only return dig.std out if we want to. And what's that going to do? That's going to get rid of all of this, the return code, and just leave us with std out. Let's run that really quick. Let's save that. And then let's run it like this and see if there's a difference. Okay. There is, as expected. What's the difference? std out isn't listed because that's all we returned. We still have a byte type object. That's fine. Fair enough. But we still have this jumbled mess. So let's take this data and let's actually parse it down a little bit. Let's make a new function. Def parse. We'll name it parse output. Let's name it like that. And what we're going to pass into there is we're going to pass host name is again. We'll just pass it in like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 of those guys, 3 of those guys. This function will clean up the output of the A record. Okay? We'll do it like that. So we have this defined as G. We can get rid of our print statement. Now let's start with parsing it. Okay? We're going to parse in. Actually, let's change this so it's not just host name anymore. We're going to parse, let's just name it data. We're going to parse data. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure that's right. And what we want to do is first we're going to convert this. Convert bytes to string. The way it makes it a little bit easier for us to process it. Then slice at new lines. Return / output a cleaner dig output. Let's name it that. Cleaner dig output. Okay? So even we could pass anything we want in here, and it's just going to be named as data. So let's see what we could do here. If we want to do, we could even, there's a couple ways we could do this. Let me show you a few of them. Okay. We could, on the next line, we could say parse out, and we could pass it as G, just like that, and it's going to pass it from here into here. We could do it like that. Alternatively, the other thing we could do, let me just add some comments. We could do it like this. Parse output, or parse out. And then we could even send in this whole guy right there. Oop. Didn't want to switch there. The joys of going back and forth on a virtual machine, right? We'll just run it like this. Get a record google.com. Yeah, we could run it like that as well. For simplicity right now, we're not going to stack all of these. We're going to do it in this manner first, though. Okay, so parse out, we're going to pass G as data. Let's save it, and let's see what happens. Run it like that, and again, we have nothing. Why? Well, now we're passing G into parse data, or parse out, but we're not doing anything with it. Okay, so let's first take a look. Let's first do this again. Print type of data. Let's look at that. Save it, run it again. Okay, we know that it's byte data. Okay, not a big deal. But let's say we want to convert it into a string. Okay, we could do that. There's a couple different ways that we could convert this. Now, one way we could try to decode this is by doing it like this. We could do data.decode, and the type that we want to decode it down to is UTF-8. So if we do a print of a type of that, print type, look at us just stacking in things here. Print type. Do we have enough things to close us out? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1 more. Let's save it and see what we get now. Okay, so the first time we did a print of data, it was bytes, and now it's a string. Okay, so we know that we could convert it like that by doing a data.decode. I'm passing UTF-8, which is just a very normal standard for formatting. So let's rename it. We can name this as, we're going to keep the name data there, but we're just going to do it like this. Data.decode UTF-8. As I hit the wrong keys again on the virtual machine. Copy, copy, copy. When you're doing this on a Mac and you hit your command button, yeah, tons of fun. Data.decode of UTF-8, okay? So now let's just do a print of data, just to take a look at what it looks like. So save it like that. Let's run it. Cool. Look at that. It printed it, and it's actually got a pretty good format right there. Huh. Well, that's kind of nice. We have a nice format. Perfect. But we want to chop it up a little bit more. Let's chop it up a little bit more, and let's begin by splitting the lines. Every time you saw one of those \ns, that's a new line. So let's slice it up. So now let's say, let's name this new data. New data is equal to data.split \n. So what we're going to do is we're going to explode this or slice it every single time that there's one of those \n's. So let's do a print of new data. Save it. Run it just like usual. Oop. There we go. I'm making those Python 2 mistakes. Such a bad habit. So many years. All right. Run it again. Whoa. And now we've just gotten it kind of crazy again. But take a look. What did we do? We turned it into a list. See that? We could also check the type, just to be safe. Type, boom. Boom. Save it, run it. See, it's a list. So now that it's a list, we can start to look at it a little bit more. Now, as you can see, we split it every time there was a new line. And what is the type of data that we're really looking for? We want to look for the answer section. Okay, answer section. That's pretty easy. But, yeah, we've got a couple of these things in there. We don't really need them at every line. We don't need the semicolon in there. We could parse this down a little bit more. We could get a little bit crazier with it. We also have some other interesting characters that are listed in here. \t. We've got tabs. That's what we've got in here. And yeah, so we've got a little bit of data that we do need to process. Now, what we could also try to figure out is which line is the most interesting. We can start digging in and looking at it there. But let's think about this. Where exactly should we parse this? Well, let's actually just spit it out line by line. Let's do a for line in new data. We're going to do a print. Actually, I think I did too many. 1, 2, 3, 4. Print line. All right, let's save that. Run it. Yeah, and it looks pretty normal right there. Looks pretty normal. But what if we want to do it a little bit differently? What if we want to see what's actually on each line? We could do one of those other built-in things called enumerate. Another built-in module. We're going to enumerate this list. And what's that mean? It means that we're going to get a line entry every time we have it. So for, let's name it index, comma line, in enumerate new data. Let's do it like this. Print index, comma line. Okay. Now we can start to see which line in the list is really the most interesting to us in this kind of a section. Okay. So now we can see that the answer section is listed on line 12. We can also see that line 13 really has the data that we want out of it. And we can validate that again. Let's just go ahead and comment these guys out for now. And let's just do it like this. Do print. We want to do new data. And we want to pass which index number? We want to pass number 13. Number 13. New line there. Save it. Now what's our output look like? Well, we can kill these two. We don't need those there anymore. But if we rerun it, get rid of those, boom. We've got one line. That's it. Just the one line that's listed there. Pretty easy. That gives us a little bit more data that we could go ahead and start processing. Now, we could just leave it like that, and we could pass it into something else. We could return it, which that'd be fine, but we have this named as parse output, and all we really want is the IP address. So if we have new line or new data 13, we should maybe slice that up again. Okay, so let's save it like this. Let's say a record is equal to new data 13 dot split. And do you remember what we had in there for tabs? The \t. Let's name it like that. And then let's do a print of a record. Save it. Run it. All right. So now we've sliced that up. So what index is actually the very last one here? We could count it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we could do it like that. Or if we know that it's going to be the very last record in there, yeah, we could just grab that very last line and do whatever we want with it. And how do we do that? Do you recall what we have to run in Python so that you can look at the very last entry that's in a list? How are we going to grab that? Let's just do it by a record minus 1. A record minus 1, or list, and then if you look at index minus 1, that's going to give you the very last entry in there. So let's save that, run it. That's all we have is just that, okay? So now that we know that's the case, we could just return it. Return a record minus 1. All right. And for fun, let's actually make one more function. Let's make a print one. Def print output. Name it like that. And we're going to pass, we're just going to name it data again. We're going to print data. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's do print the IP address of google.com is, we're going to pass this as a variable in here. And we're going to say data. Okay. Pretty easy to do. And then all we need to do, let's name it like this. Parse, I'm going to name that as parse equals parse G. And then I'm going to name, I'm just going to run this as print output parse. Actually, I want to name it parsed, like it's in the past tense. Save it. Enter a few times. Run it. And there you go. Now, you could really add in a little bit more on this, but for now, we'll keep it simple. And again, if you can't reach Google in the area that you're in, I know there's students from all over the world here. You could do other ones. You could do other websites. You could do Facebook. You could do Alibaba. Do whatever is in your country where you're at, and you could check it there. For example, if we want to look at Facebook, of course, we got to change this because we're not making this dynamic at the time. Facebook.com is that. Save it. Get a record of Facebook.com. Save, run, boom. There we go. Pretty simple. So now that you've written your first function, and it's not just something simple like a hello world, hopefully that gives you a little bit more data so we can start moving into this next section as we really start processing some data in there. See you in the next section.